Welcome back to another episode of BAMAN's podcast. I'm Emma Gray and I'm your host along today with Harriet Burgess.
Hello all.
We're both regional leads for the East Anglia area, and we're also very excited to be joined by Anna Baker, who is very well renowned in BAMAN for being a nurse speaker at our conferences, and a very advanced nurse speaker at that. And that is what the basis of our episode is today, is to talk about pushing our nurses to the forefront of public speaking and being advocates for aesthetic medicine. So welcome, Anna, to our podcast today.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
So run us through a bit of a background about how you became an aesthetic nurse and how that sort of led to you publicly speaking, both for companies and for us in BAMAN.
So from my NHS days, they were mixed between, I started off in general medicine on wards and left within dermatology. And when I came into medical aesthetics, which was quite accidental, I attended a toxin and a filler training course, as many of us did, back in, some time ago, 2008, and was very curious and liked what I saw. And honestly, it developed from there. And that was really off the recommendation of a nurse that I was working with at the time that said, you could develop this with skin in the aesthetic world. Botox as well, and obviously toxin filler, were treatments that I think were really on the ascent at that time. The dawn of skin rejuvenation and skin quality, as we talk about now. Yeah. It was a very different sector in terms of the modalities that built the backbone of people's clinics. It was very injectable led. And of course, those treatments still have their place. But from a public speaking and a presenting element, I had very limited exposure and opportunities. And it wasn't even something that was ever really on my radar at all as a student nurse, as a qualified nurse. It was only really when I came into medical aesthetics. And again, they were not opportunities, if I'm honest, that I actively sought out. I began working with a consultant plastic surgeon that I think many people know, Mr. Dalby Humzar, and his practice at that time, as it still is, was presenting and being engaged in a lot of sort of stage work and teaching activities, and that fueled a lot of interest for me with the anatomy courses and different programs that we wrote together to develop that element. So one of the first public speaking courses that I did was at the Royal College of Surgeons, alongside consultants. And I'll never forget it. It was in about 2011, 2012, when the Royal College of Surgeons was still active in Holborn in Lincoln's Inn Fields. It doesn't run any sort of fresh frozen or cadaveric work now at all. But the teaching opportunities there at that time were incredible. And I paid to go and do that 2-day course. And it was probably one of the most challenging and frightening things I've ever done. Not because in any way those consultants made me feel like an imposter. That was in my head.
It often is though, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I'll never forget that. But I thought, if I can do that and be accepted, I need to lose this imposter stuff.
Yeah, of course.
And remember, at the end of the day, they all feel like I did. And almost everyone I know in medical aesthetics is a grassroots story that had to find the courage, but feel that enthusiasm and feel that support in a safe place from colleagues, which I feel we do a very good job of at BAMAN.
I think what's interesting in the medical aesthetic field is people are choosing to be there.
Yes,
so actually by listening to people on stage, you're already engaged.
Yeah.
So actually from a speaking perspective, you aren't having to engage them initially.
No.
They're there to listen. So in some ways, I think that's quite a positive start to speaking on stage, unlike other things, where people have to sit because they need to be there rather than
like mandatory training.
No, absolutely. Exactly. Yeah, it's, there's different motivation. And one of the first speaking opportunities I had to an audience of around, more than 100, I'd say about 200, was because I'd written an anatomy article and I wasn't a BAMAN, BACN as it was then, I wasn't a BACN board member at the time. And Lou Sommerow had read this article unbeknown to me and sent me an email and said, would you come and present that at our conference?
Oh, nice. Okay.
And again, like the instant thing is
The
like,
fear.
I'm not good enough.
Imposter
They
syndrome.
found me
I'm
out.
not good enough. Why me? So I get it. And I thought, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. So I did. And do you know what? At the end of the day, presenting to a nurse audience, firstly, I think is always going to be the safest place you can be in, because we are collegial and we'll always have each other's backs.
Yeah.
Because we've all been there.
Yeah. Totally.
And we only want to see each other grow and elevate each other anyway. That's the whole ethos of the backbone of who we are and what we do.
And also learn from each other.
Absolutely.
I want to know everything that you've got to tell me, Anna, because I want to know your speciality. I want you to share your secrets with us in aesthetics. And I think that's important, is that when nurses do come together, we want to learn from each other and we want to listen to each other, and we have the respect for each other to do that. And it is such a safe space within the BAMAN conferences and agenda days.
It really, really is. And even taking that down on a much smaller scale, even just, supporting and, encouraging our membership to feel comfortable and included in being part of their region, to stand up and just present to their friends and
I think
their peers.
And I think that's what we want to really get across in this podcast, guys, is you're sitting there listening as a BAMAN member. We want you to come forward and we really want you to start speaking on stage. And if it's just something small, like at a local event or something, really, if it's something that's interesting you, any topic that we can relate to medical aesthetics, we'd love you to come and get involved.
Both, whether it's a smaller group, like you were saying, Anna, within our regional meets, we have 2 pockets where we fill that with what we think as a team we would like. And I think, we are really aware that we have a large amount of nurses with just so much knowledge to be able to use us and them as sort of a collective. Our representation within the actual speciality would just be phenomenal, really.
And I think what's important as well, whether it's within BAMAN that you're speaking or BAMAN gives you the confidence to be able to go on and speak for companies in the future, is that companies are interested in nurses because nurses follow nurses.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Within products and within training. And companies are wising up to this, that we are there as advocates for each other and for our organisation. And obviously, as I've said before, we're the biggest group of injectors. So why would you not want nurses to represent your company? And obviously within BAMAN, we want our members to represent us, and we want our members on stage talking. Of course, we love to hear and have other specialities come on board, and some of the doctors we have it like present and stuff. It's so invaluable. But nurses want to listen to nurses as well. So we really, really urge you to come forward and get involved, and you will grow professionally and personally as well.
Absolutely.
I liked what Anna said about the fear of it. And I must admit that is what it's like catch-22, isn't it? Because you're so scared of it. And even doing the podcasts and stuff we've found, we're like, oh my God, why have we signed up to this? Because you come here and you're like, oh my God. But then you get here and you're like, oh, I love it. And when you finish it, you're like, they're so euphoric and you're like, oh, this was amazing. I can't wait for the next one. Please, I'll do it again. But I think with public speaking is that there is that fear. And it either drives you to do it or it doesn't. And I was one of them people where the fear drove me to do it. And I was like, do you know what? I'm so scared, but I'm going to go up there and I'm going to do it. I think what we want to get across to the members is that there isn't a big jump to you coming to one of us and saying, actually, do you know what? I'd really like to get involved with speaking. We're not going to stick you straight up on a conference stage in front of 200 people. There's little stepping stones that we can do. Obviously, with the Insta lives that we have, they can be, and this is what I would always urge people to do, is don't throw yourself in the deep end and talk about something you have no idea about or that you're not passionate about. I think if you choose a subject that you're confident with and that you know a lot about,
you don't need to be perfect.
No,
do you?
It's and no one's expecting that. Actually,
be real.
We think they are, but they're not.
Yeah.
They want to hear, I think, your experience. And what do you do?
How I've done a few little presentations and stuff over the year for BAMAN and at the London regionals and stuff. And the way I got into it was I'm a brand ambassador for PCA. I'd used them for 5 years before I even spoke about them. So to me, that was my bread and butter. I knew all their products. I knew all their ingredients. I felt confident enough to get up there and talk about it and hold myself. If you'd have got me to talk about the cohesivity of certain fillers and brands, I would have been like out of my depth and I wouldn't have felt comfortable.
And honestly, I think you make a really good point, Emma, because it can be, I think, quite seductive, the offers and opportunities that can come increasingly to nurses from various companies. You know, it can often look like a very nice, attractive offer to be an ambassador, but invariably within that involves some element of speaking and sharing your knowledge, whether that's on a larger scale or whether that's very informal and peer-to-peer or at the bedside in a training session. But I think what you said so beautifully was the experience that you've got behind that and the belief and the credibility.
Yeah.
Because I feel like sometimes it might be quite easy to sometimes stand up and endorse or even talk about something that maybe you don't know that well.
Yeah. You haven't got the underpinning foundations and knowledge, and you've not used it in your clinics.
And at the end of the day, that's every individual's choice to stand by that and, you know, and be comfortable with that decision. We're certainly not here to dictate. But I do feel there is a lot to be said for building credibility and trust in terms of listening to certain, and this is overarching to nurses, doctors and dentists in my opinion, but I think for sure when you're in the audience, you know when someone you're listening to has that genuine, authentic belief in what they're using, their case studies, what did they do when the treatment didn't go to plan, how did they manage that, you know, all of that is, you can't buy it, it's time and experience and often a number of treatments as a journey, right? And that is the essence, I think. That doesn't mean you have to be the world's best speaker, because that passion and belief, as you said, will come through. And that's what people want.
And also I find it sometimes more daunting having to stand up there and remember, was it this percentage, that percentage? What was the statistics? Whereas when it's your personal experience and you're talking about how you've applied it in your clinic and how you've applied it with your patients, you can't mess that up because that's facts. You're presenting facts to the audience of how it's worked for you and the personal approach, which people really
like
connect with.
Anna, it's experience, you know, it runs through everything. It's maybe not just about products, about how you grew your business or about how you introduced a machine or whatever
pitfalls.
that subject was. Pitfalls, absolutely.
Honesty. We had one of our speakers, I remember that I think was a topic that we picked deliberately, something like, I think the topic we asked this particular person to cover that, I mean, incidentally wasn't a nurse on this occasion, but he was tasked with his honesty of how he selected and worked with certain energy-based systems in his clinic, given that, you know, it's a huge sector of the market. It's almost a subspecialty of our sector now, and it's a minefield if it's an area that nurses or medical practitioners are looking to go into. And I feel that level of transparency and honesty to almost cut through the narrative. I'd be like, okay, I made that purchase or I made that decision. I wouldn't do that again. This is what I learned. And this is what I would do differently next time.
Yeah, I think a way of introducing public speaking as well is if you're worried about it in the big audiences, is me and Harriet are regional leads for East Anglia, and what we've done with a couple of our members that have wanted to, we've always given people the choice to present case studies or also complications. I always say we're meeting up if anyone's got any patients that they're having difficulties with or they want to run things past us, and it's learning for all of us, not just for the person that's got that patient that they're dealing with, and we all learn from it. So I would always advocate for people to come to the meetings, and if you have got something that you're dealing with, or you've got something that worked really well, or a complication, or how could I have done this differently, or how would you treat this, please let us know, because we'd be more than happy for you to talk about it and share it. And we wouldn't make you stand up at the front. You could literally sit around the table with us, and that's a great way to talk in front of your peers that you've probably met a few times before. You're not standing on a stage, but you're perhaps just sat around a table with 10 of us nurses that will just it'll be more of a conversation, and that's such a great intro into be able to public speak.
Both of you have spoken publicly, not just spoken,
and on many things, I will say.
What I would say, what is your number one top tip for beating the nerves?
I would say don't take it so seriously.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, enjoy it. At the end of the day, it is what it is. It's a snapshot in time. And I almost feel in my head now, I think, but I don't have to be here to do this. I choose to.
Yes, yeah.
It's my experience and my story. And in many ways, it almost doesn't matter if it doesn't hit the mark with everyone.
Yeah.
It's never going to resonate with every person in the audience.
I mean, that's applicable for everything, right? You're never going to please every single person.
and almost enjoy it. And I try not to take it so seriously. I used to have no, don't get me wrong, obviously the fear, and the nerves. Of course, that's natural. We're human, and that's completely normal. Even if Steve Jobs was to stand up and do a TED talk, the fear's there in everyone. But things like humour, and just talking to the audience and thinking, okay, so if the slides go, doesn't matter, because as you said, I know it inside out. I don't need it. It's a prompt. We can just have a conversation, whether it's 1-to-1 or whether it's 1,000 people.
And you're
really,
it's
no
drive
different
more engagement that way, right?
For sure. It's like I just want to talk to you and be like, just bring the audience into the room and get into their working memory.
I think my biggest take home message with it as well is don't let it be too scripted, because people will switch off.
And something will happen.
Death by PowerPoint.
People know.
And if you just got slides and you're just reading through slides, everyone's been there. We've all seen it. And people, that's why it sometimes is better not to have structure to a certain extent, where it is literally like reading off a script, because you're not engaging and people won't engage with you.
I mean, for me, when I think about presenting, I think past the nerves, what am I trying to achieve by presenting? So actually, if I know that maybe 10 out of that 100 audience have taken one piece of learning from that, my job is done.
Absolutely.
So I think,
absolutely,
as long as you've got sort of maybe a goal in mind, you can focus on that goal, talk through that presentation of whatever you're presenting on. And actually, before you know it, you're at the end and you're like, wow, I've done
that. Yeah. But also last year, BAMAN actually did a workshop with Nikki Karan, and it was fantastic. I attended it. There was a lot of other BAMAN members that attended it, and they are rolling them out again this year. So please, if it is something you're thinking about, please reach out to us. Please reach out to the office, to your regional leaders, anyone on the board.
Yeah, absolutely.
And put your name forward. It was such a fantastic day.
She's very good. I had the pleasure of doing some presentation training with Nikki through another company that I was working with the year before. And she covered something that I had covered with another company that I'd done some presentation skills with. And I think it was so relevant and really hits the mark with our members about this idea that humans generally, and I forget the psychology and the principles behind it, tend to gravitate towards the number 3, in as far as starting out clearly with the purpose, fulfilling that purpose, and then leaving with a really powerful take-home message. Never thank you, but like something super powerful. Like you said, what is the one thing that you need to know and take away from the session?
Because I know we have so many nurses. I mean, I can even think of a couple at the moment that are doing their PhD. Not that you need to be working at that level to be able to publicly speak, but they will definitely have some experience
they can share.
Even just to pick up on that point, Harriet, I think you make is brilliant in that it would be really lovely because a lot of our nurses do actively engage in postgraduate study in lots of different guises and lots of different routes. So just to hear how one nurse has gone from, the master's level truly into the advanced realm of PhD and what that journey looked like, the process, the funding, how that's, how is that sort of navigable day to day with clinic and life, and level is a big jump from an MSc, as we know, or let alone anything else. So I think just to share that alone would be great as one example. I think what dovetails this quite nicely is to publish. And I know we've got one nursing journal dedicated solely to medical aesthetic nursing, the Journal of Aesthetic Nursing, who I know are actively always looking for content. And I think often to get published, very often those papers will, are accessible globally. They will end up on all the search engines. And that is a very nice way as a precursor to have your name out to a far bigger audience. Totally it's a nice soft step into this to be able to refer to, the topic, has been recognised by a peer review publication. And we have a dedicated nurse journal. So, it's even easier to, to get that first foot in the door.
And maybe the way of people and our nurses coming on stage to public speak is to go down, getting something published first.
Get published.
And then present that to us.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because like I said before, you know it inside out. You've had it published. You've written that.
Absolutely.
You know exactly what you're talking about.
Information
absolutely.
To share.
And I think it's very progressive that to the best of my knowledge at least, all the current UK journals, Aesthetic Medicine Magazine, Aesthetics Journal, the PMFA Journal, are all very invested in nurses
very engaged.
around
Yes,
the table.
I'd agree.
Publishing, the last issue I saw from Aesthetics Journal, I believe off memory, had at least 7 pieces published by nurses.
Oh, which is brilliant, isn't it?
And that's only one example that I can think of. So there are no barriers here.
Do you know what I think is lovely as well to reflect on is obviously we were all in the NHS, and if I look back to 10 years ago when I was sitting behind the desk at A&E, I never 1 minute thought that actually, do you know what, in some career that I have, I could be on stage speaking to 200 people, or I could be publishing
overseas.
an article in a magazine. There's so many avenues with this, isn't there? It isn't just that you're a nurse injector now and you're doing aesthetics. There's
as
so
wide
many,
as you make it.
Yeah,
it is exactly what you make it, Harriet. You hit the nail on the head. The thing is, for all the challenges that we have in each country, the trade-off is the diversity of how far we can go.
Yes.
It's there.
Yeah.
It's there.